My name is Dorothy Miller. I am 74 years old. For nearly 38 years, I worked as a hospital housekeeping supervisor at St. Mary's Medical Center in Cleveland, Ohio. I cleaned operating rooms, patient wards, and hallways that never slept. I believed honest work and quiet sacrifice were enough to earn love in the end. I was wrong. I had only one child, my son Brian Miller. After my husband died from cancer, Brian became my entire world. I worked extra shifts so he could attend college without loans. I skipped meals so he could have better shoes. I never complained. Mothers like me were taught that love meant giving until there was nothing left. For years, Brian called every day, then every week, then only when he needed something. When my health began failing, arthritis in my hands, dizziness that came without warning, Brian decided it was time. "Mom, the facility is nice," he said, avoiding my eyes. "They'll take care of you better than I can." That's how I ended up at Silver Pines Nursing Home. He promised he'd visit. He promised he'd call. The room was small but clean. A single bed, a dresser, a window facing the parking lot. I placed my photos carefully. Brian as a child, Brian at graduation, Brian smiling beside me on my last birthday at home. I told myself this was temporary. Then came my 75th birthday. I woke up early that morning, heart full of quiet hope. I wore my favorite cardigan. I brushed my hair carefully. I sat near the phone. Hours passed. No calls, no cake, no flowers, just a simple card slid under my door by the nursing home staff. It read, "Happy birthday, Dorothy. We're glad you're with us." I smiled for them. I cried alone. I checked my phone again and again. No missed calls, no messages. Brian didn't forget. He chose not to remember. That night, I lay awake listening. To the hallway, sounds, carts rolling distant. Coughs, muted televisions. I wondered how a son raised with so much love could grow into someone who abandoned the woman, who gave him everything. I replayed every moment of his childhood in my mind, searching for the mistake. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. My birthday came and went without a single word from him. The staff noticed. "Any family coming today?" one nurse asked gently. I shook my head. Slowly, something inside me changed. I stopped waiting. I stopped checking the phone. Instead, I started writing. I wrote letters I never sent. I wrote about the nights I stayed up when Brian was sick, about the overtime shifts, about the pride I felt watching him succeed. Writing didn't erase the pain, but it gave it shape. At Silver Pines, I met others like me, parents forgotten while alive, loved only when needed, ignored until convenient. We shared stories quietly, like secrets too heavy to carry alone. One afternoon, the facility held a small birthday celebration for residents. A simple cake, a few balloons. When they sang for me, I smiled politely, but inside, something hardened. Not anger, acceptance. I began organizing my finances, my pension, my savings, everything Brian assumed would one day be his. I didn't rush. I didn't announce anything. I simply prepared. Years passed. My health worsened, but my mind remained sharp. Brian called once a year sometimes. Brief, distant, mechanical. "Hope you're okay, Mom." I stopped saying I miss you. Then one winter morning, the phone rang. I knew something was different the moment I heard his voice. Urgent? Desperate. "Mom," he said, breath shaky, "I need help." He told me everything. Emergency surgery. Medical bills. Insurance delays. He needed money. I closed my eyes slowly and remembered. No calls, no cake, no flowers, just a card from strangers. I told him I'd think about it. That night, I sat by the window watching snow fall silently, and I made my decision. This was not revenge. This was balance. I am 74 years old. I live in Silver Pines Nursing Home, Cleveland, Ohio. When Brian called that winter morning, I knew something was wrong before he even spoke. A mother always knows. His voice didn't sound confident anymore. It sounded small, fragile, the same way it used to sound when he was a child afraid of the dark. "Mom, I need help," he said. Those 4 words echoed in my ears long after the call ended. He called again that evening. Then the next day. Then the day after that. Messages, voicemails, emails, urgent and polite and desperate. "Mom, the doctors say the surgery can't wait." "Mom, I wouldn't ask if I had another option." I listened to every message. I didn't delete them. I didn't respond. The nurses noticed my silence. "Everything okay?" Dorothy one asked, gently. "Yes," I replied calmly. "Everything is clear." And it was, for the first time in years, my thoughts weren't clouded by hope or disappointment. They were sharp, focused. I remembered my 75th birthday. I remembered sitting by the phone all day. I remembered the empty table, the untouched slice of cake. I remembered the card. Not from him. From strangers? Back then, I had made excuses for him. He's busy. He'll call later. But now, years later, hearing his desperation, I finally understood something painful but freeing. He didn't forget me because he was busy. He forgot me because I was no longer useful. That realization hurt more than the loneliness ever did, but it also gave me strength. I went to my drawer and pulled out my old files, bank statements, savings, records, pension details. Money I had saved for emergencies like this. But then I asked myself one question. Where was he when I needed him? Unannounced, it was the first time I had seen him in almost 3 years. He looked thinner, tired, afraid. "Mom," he said, forcing a smile. I looked at him quietly. "You look well," he added awkwardly. I didn't respond. We sat in silence for a long moment. Then he spoke. "I know I haven't been around," he said quickly. "But, I love you." I nodded slowly. Love. Such a big word. So easy to say, so hard to prove. "I need the money, Mom," he finally said. "Just for the surgery. I'll pay you back. I swear." I looked at his hands. The same hands I once held when he crossed the street. The same hands that never reached out to me on my birthdays. "Do you remember my 75th birthday?" I asked softly. He froze. "No calls," I continued calmly. "No cake. No flowers. Just a card from the staff." His eyes dropped. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Sorry doesn't fill empty years. Sorry doesn't erase silence. I waited, I said. I waited all day. I thought maybe you'd surprise me. He swallowed. I didn't think it mattered, he admitted. Those words hit harder than any insult. After that, the conversation ended quickly. He left with hope still in his eyes. Hope I hadn't given him. That night, I didn't cry. I slept peacefully. For the first time in a long time, days passed. Brian's messages became more desperate. "Mom, the surgery is scheduled. Mom, please respond. Mom, I don't know what else to do." I sat by the same phone he had ignored years ago, and I did exactly what he had taught me. I stayed silent. This wasn't cruelty. This wasn't revenge. This was mirroring. He gave me silence when I needed love. Now, silence was all I had left to give. The nurses asked if I wanted to talk to him again. I shook my head. "I already said everything," I replied, and I had, just not with words. One evening, as I watched the sunset from my window, I felt something unexpected. Not bitterness, not anger. Peace. I had finally learned the lesson life tried to teach me for years. Love without respect is exhaustion. Sacrifice without appreciation is self-destruction. And silence sometimes speaks louder than forgiveness. Brian stopped calling after a while. The messages ended. The phone went quiet, just like it had been on my birthday. And for the first time, the quiet didn't hurt. It healed. My name is Dorothy Miller. I am 74 years old. And this is the final part of my story. After Brian stopped calling, the world didn't end the way I once feared it would. In fact, something unexpected happened. It became quiet. Not the painful kind of quiet that echoes with hope, but the calm kind, the kind that lets you breathe. Weeks passed. No calls. No messages. No updates. I didn't know whether Brian had the surgery or not, and for the first time in my life, I realized something that made my chest tighten and relax at the same time. I wasn't responsible anymore. For decades, I had carried the weight of being his safety net, his emergency plan, his last option, and when I finally needed him, he was gone. Now the roles were reversed, and I chose not to run. One afternoon, Nurse Evelyn came into my room holding a newspaper. "Dorothy," she said gently, "your son, he was mentioned here." My heart skipped not with fear, but with awareness. I nodded. "You can tell me." Brian had gone through the surgery. It was successful. He survived. I closed my eyes slowly. Not in relief, not in joy, but in acceptance. That night, I sat by my window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. I thought about the years I spent scrubbing hospital floors while other families slept peacefully, about the overtime shifts, the sacrifices, the birthdays I celebrated alone. And I asked myself a hard question. If I had helped him again, would anything have changed? I already knew the answer. No. Helping him would have taught him that abandonment has no consequences. That mothers forgive endlessly. That silence from him was acceptable, but silence from me was cruel. I refused to teach that lesson. A month later, Brian finally came to see me. He looked different, older, humbled. He stood in the doorway for a long moment before speaking. "Mom," his voice cracked. I didn't rush. "I almost died," he said quietly. I nodded. "I know." I kept checking my phone, he continued. Waiting for a message? Waiting for anything? I looked at him then. Really looked at him. "And how did that feel?" I asked softly. He swallowed hard. "Lonely," he whispered. "Scary? Empty?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I didn't remind him. I simply said, "That's how my birthday felt." The room fell silent. Not the healing silence. The heavy one. "I deserved it," he finally said. "Didn't I?" I paused. "No," I replied honestly. "No one deserves to be forgotten. But everyone deserves to learn." He cried then, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. Like a child who finally understood what he had lost. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. I just wanted you to know. I nodded. I do know. He left shortly after. No arguments, no demands, no expectations. And for the first time, our goodbye felt real. Life at Silver Pines continued. I started leading a small writing group for residents. We shared stories of love, regret, and resilience. Stories of being parents who gave everything and were forgotten anyway. And slowly, something beautiful happened. We stopped feeling ashamed. I learned that forgiveness doesn't always mean reconnection. Sometimes, forgiveness means peace without access. Brian sends a card now. Once a year, no requests. No guilt. Just words. And that's enough. I am Dorothy Miller. I worked nearly 40 years cleaning hospitals. I raised a son with everything I had. I was forgotten on my birthday, left with silence when I needed love. And years later, when my son needed me most, I gave him exactly what he gave me. Silence. Not out of cruelty, but out of truth. YouTube style ending. If this story touched your heart, remember this. Being a parent doesn't mean being invisible. Love without respect drains you. Silence is sometimes a boundary, not punishment. Like this video if you believe parents deserve respect. Subscribe for more real-life emotional stories. Turn on the bell so you never miss a story that matters. Thank you for listening.